Hi friend, I'm twin number 3. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I intend for this video to be a brief tribute to Dr. Carl Sagan. Dr. Sagan was a famous astronomer and astrophysicist. He was involved in many of the space programs, from the moon launches to robotic programs. He was a pioneer of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He was critically involved in designing the plaques for the Pioneer probes and the golden album that is on the Voyager spacecraft. These are intended to convey information to extraterrestrials about those of us on Earth. Dr. Sagan might be best known for his program Cosmos. This program has been seen by 1 out of every 13 people living on the Earth. That's amazing. It's one of the ways that Dr. Sagan has popularized astronomy and science in general. He also wrote at least 20 books and was a fantastic lecturer. Dr. Sagan was also one of the authors of a very important paper that came out in the 1980s. Prior to that, nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union was a very real possibility. Both sides thought that they could actually win such a war. This paper showed that if a war occurred, there would be a nuclear winter that would affect all of us on the globe. In other words, we would all lose in such a war. But probably the best known phrase that is associated with Carl Sagan is billions and billions, as in billions and billions of stars in the galaxy. It's hard to believe in a time when we glibly talk about trillions of dollars of debt, but at that time, most people had never heard of a billion. A million was the largest number they'd heard of. So Dr. Sagan more or less single-handedly expanded everyone's awareness by 1,000-fold. Ironically, there is now a unit of measure called the Sagan, which is 4 billion. So now we can simply say that there are 100 Sagan stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So, Carl Sagan is associated with very large-scale things. But I wanted to pay tribute to him with an anecdote concerning something that happened on a very small scale, the scale of one person. There are many things known about Carl Sagan, but I think very few people know about this. I would like to offer it as an insight into the man and as a special tribute to him. My mother taught 5th grade. She had a student who had a learning disability. He had a hard time with school, and all the other kids picked on him too. This boy loved Carl Sagan's work. Even though it would take him an hour to read one page, he had read most of Dr. Sagan's books. That's really amazing for anyone, and especially for a 5th grader. So I wrote Dr. Sagan a short note. I told him about this boy and asked him to send him just a brief note of encouragement. I gave him the boy's name and the address of the school. I did not hear anything back though for quite a long time, and I thought that was really naive of me. All the more so because Dr. Sagan was very famous and very busy. But then after about 6 months, toward the end of the school year, I got a letter from Dr. Sagan. He apologized for taking so long to reply. He said he had put my letter on his desk, then covered it up with a pile of stuff, and he had just now worked his way down through the pile. He told me though that he had sent a note to this boy. Well, a couple of days later, a large box arrived at the school addressed to this boy. The return address was Carl Sagan. Now, this was a little town in the middle of nowhere, but everybody there knew who Carl Sagan was. My mother waited until the end of the school day, but since all the other kids had picked on this boy, she had him open the box in class. Inside there was a long letter from Dr. Sagan to him. In addition, there were some autographed books, and then a number of absolutely unique items from the space programs that Dr. Sagan had worked on. I guess he had gone through his office looking for things that a 10 or 11-year-old might like. Of course, initially this boy was stunned and then absolutely thrilled to get this package. All the other kids had to look at him quite differently. All in all, it was a very good experience. About 8 years after that, this kid stopped by my mother's house in the summer. He had just finished his first year of college. 8 years before, it seemed extremely unlikely that this kid would ever get into college. But he'd worked very hard, he'd made it in, he stopped by to say that things were going very well. And then he said, "You know, the day I got that package from Dr. Sagan was the best day of my life. It changed everything. I knew that I mattered, and I knew that what I did counted." There are some sad postscripts. Dr. Sagan got a rare disease. He put up a long, very good fight, but succumbed to it. Later that summer, as this kid was returning to college, he was hit by a drunk driver. He had massive injuries, including severe brain damage. He faced an extremely difficult, very long road to recovery, massive medical expenses. You know, you'll never convince me that life is fair. From what I've seen so far, it's the very best people who have the hardest time by far. I'm looking for a way to close this video. I know that there's a lot more to this story than I can articulate. Maybe it's something like this. In a gigantic universe with millions of galaxies, in a galaxy with billions of stars, around a very ordinary star toward the periphery, on a very small planet, in an ordinary town and a small school, there was a 5th grader. And Carl Sagan knew that that 5th grader mattered. Maybe that's a truth that there's still time for all of us to learn. Thank you so much for listening. I'm twin number 3.